Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name's Kit, and this is clearly not my world. This is the Japanese garden at Newstead Abbey, which is kind of near me. And welcome to my channel. Thank you very much for joining me. In this special episode, I'm going to be discussing 8 books that made me cry. So, without further ado, but with plenty of Kleenex standing by, let's get cracking. The first book I want to discuss is Tarka the Otter, written in 1927 by Henry Williamson. This book follows the first year and the last year in the life of Tarka the Otter. So it has built-in tears. There's no way of avoiding it, really. But aside from the fact that obviously in the last year of Tarka's life you're eventually going to have to witness her death, the whole book is full of really bad stuff that happens to otters. There's lots of hunting activity, and there are traps and there are accidents. It's a miserable book for someone like myself. It's considered one of the greatest books ever written. It's a classic. And by the way, she dies by a hunt. It's not a natural death. She's hunted for 9 hours. She's hunted and eventually killed. So, of course, that made me cry. The book of Tarka the Otter was eventually made into a film in 1979, directed by David Cobham. And I went to see that film. My grandma Lila took me to see that film when I was, 5 years old, perhaps. And I wept. I wept throughout the film. I remember vividly leaning forward in my seat and weeping all over the head of the elderly lady who was sitting in the seat directly in front of me. And at the end of the movie, when it finally finished, the old lady stood up to leave and left her wig behind, stuck to my face, affixed to my upper lip by my dried up and crusty snot. And so I then had to peel her wig off my face and give it back to her. The next book is another otter book. It's Ring of Bright Water by Gavin Maxwell, published in 1960. In this book, a man buys a baby otter and raises it in his home in the Scottish Highlands. And again, no surprises, I guess, the otter dies. This time it's killed by a ditch digger. It is widely considered to be a literary masterpiece. It sold over 1 million copies, and of course it was made into a film in 1969, directed by Jack Cooper and starring Bill Travers and Virginia McKenna, the husband and wife acting team who we will revisit later. The next book on the list is The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, published in 1950 and written by C.S. Lewis. This is a book that no one will be unfamiliar with, I shouldn't think. The scene that really affected me very dramatically when I was a very, very young reader was, of course, the scene where Aslan sacrifices himself. He dies at the hands of the White Witch on the stone table after being tortured and humiliated first. And after he dies, the 2 girls, Susan and Lucy Pevensey, weep over his corpse. And it's this scene that so dramatically affected me when I was very, very young. The 2 girls weeping over Aslan's corpse. It's a very emotional scene. And then, of course, what finished me off was the sweet little mice chewing through the ropes that bound him, trying to free him. And one of the girls says, the poor little things, they don't realise he's dead. And that just finished me off. The next book on the list is The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, another one by C.S. Lewis in the Narnia Chronicles, this time published in 1952. And again, it's an animal thing. It's Reepicheep this time. At the end of the book, Reepicheep finally arrives at Aslan's country, and of course that is the moment of his death, and he does it very beautifully. He sort of sails off in his coracle into Aslan's land, and he's never seen again. The next book on the list is Watership Down by Richard Adams, published in 1972. And this is a rabbit book. In this book, a seer rabbit named Hazel foretells the destruction of his burrow, and so he leads himself and a group of friends off to the land that he envisages as being their new home. It's called Watership Down, and they have a tremendous journey getting there. And when they arrive at Watership Down, of course, they must seek out some girlfriends in order to continue rabbiting, I suppose. But then he dies. Hazel dies, and Bright Eyes happens. And if you're not familiar with Bright Eyes, it's one of the most tear-jerking songs ever written, and it has a lot of tear-jerking imagery to go along with it, including ghostly rabbits cavorting about in the sky because they're dead. So it's very sad. Rabbits die, other things die. There's death and Bright Eyes. Death and Bright Eyes, that's what I remember about Watership Down. I've allowed myself to get a little sidetracked there. I was talking about the book of Watership Down, and then I kind of segued clumsily into the film. There was a film, I can't remember who directed it or what the date was. I will put up a caption. The next book on the list is The Plague Dogs, also by Richard Adams, and first published in 1977. And in this book, two dogs escape from a government research lab in the Lake District, where they have been horribly mistreated. And sometime after their escape, a journalist writes a fictitious story about them, spreading fear and lies, which results in a massive dog hunt. And the dogs may or may not die at the end. It's left a little bit ambiguous, but a fox certainly dies, and it's another weepy. My next pick is Born Free, written by Joy Adamson in 1960. And this is the very famous story about how Joy Adamson and her husband George raised an orphaned lion cub, Elsa. They raised her, they nurtured her, and eventually they successfully released her back into the wild. I believe it was the first time this had ever been done. They kind of literally wrote the book on how to raise lion cubs and release them into the wild. And several lions die in this book. It's very, very sad. And of course, it was made into a movie. The movie was made in 1966, directed by James Hill, and again starring Bill Travers and Virginia McKenna, the husband and wife team. It's a beautiful movie, and it features the song Born Free, which, very much like Bright Eyes, is another perfect weepy. And of course, Born Free also became the name of the foundation, which was set up by Virginia McKenna and Bill Travers, the Born Free Foundation, of which I am a member and I donate regularly. And I encourage you to do the same. Have a look online, find the Born Free Foundation, and please give them a donation. They are one of the best animal charities in the world, in my opinion. They do great work, not just for lions and lion conservation, but also general conservation and protection of endangered species, all different kinds of species. They really look after animals all around the world. They're a marvellous organisation. So watch the film Born Free, read the book Born Free, and donate to the Born Free Foundation, please. The next book on the list is The Singing Tree by Brian Parvin, published in 1985. And this is a post-apocalyptic fantasy. The blurb on the front of the book says, "After the Holocaust, a haunting fantasy." And it is haunting, and I suppose it's a fantasy. It features a dog fox, Challen, who survives the Holocaust and goes off in search of a new animal utopia. The promised promised land for surviving animals. Along the way, he meets a vixen who becomes his mate, and they go off on this long quest in search of the promised land, where it is rumoured there is a tree, a kind of font of life, called the singing tree. And of course, he eventually finds the singing tree, whereupon he curls up and dies. I think I will read you an excerpt. I will read you the last paragraph of the book, and you'll see what I mean. His eyes closed. Somewhere far above him a breeze murmured through the cloudless sky. He sensed it, listened to it, happy that it had come at last to hum among the leaves and lull him into final sleep. And soon he knew the tree would sing. The seventh pick on my list is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, first published in 1995. And I've been on a Hobb journey, something of an odyssey. So if you want to know more about that, you can look at my reading vlog all about the Robin Hobb books. But Assassin's Apprentice is the first of 16 or more books dealing with the character of Fitz, who has animal empathy. It's known in the book as the wit. He's witted and he can communicate with animals, and over the course of the books he bonds with several. But in Assassin's Apprentice he bonds with 2 dogs, and as a reader you fall in love with these dogs and then get to witness them die horribly. And so it's very sad, extremely triggering for me, and read them with caution and with Kleenex. The final book on my list is Fool's Errand, also by Robin Hobb and published in 2001. And again, this is a book that features Fitz and his wolf Night Eyes. And spoiler alert, this is the book in which Night Eyes dies, and I can't even bear to describe it to you, it's so horrible. This book triggered me so badly that I promised myself that I would never read another Robin Hobb book ever again, and I've since reneged on that agreement with myself because I'm currently ploughing through the entire set and finding it much easier this time, mainly because I know what's coming. But I'm currently reading Fool's Errand and finding it very hard because there is foreshadowing, and now I know what to expect. So I'm reading it very slowly and trying not to ever arrive at that awful, fateful moment. It's beautifully written, but very, very sad. So there you have it, 8 books that made me cry. I hope I haven't just made you cry, but if you've read any of these books and if they had a similar effect on you or a completely different effect, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you made of these books, or indeed the films that were adapted from these books. And on that note, I think I'll call it a day. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't already, you know what to do. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share, comment, do all the good stuff, and I will see you next time. See you later.